Hey, it's Zane. Welcome back. Thanks for tuning in. It's been a couple of days since I put a video out, so thanks for being here. And it's great to be sharing it once again. It's been a really busy week for me. So today I want to talk about why you must save in Bitcoin if you want to brighten your future. If you want a better life, you want to reduce the cost of living, you want to start planning again for the future and know that you have a comfortable retirement ahead of you. All of these kinds of things are really, really important now because unfortunately we are seeing all of the cracks starting to appear in the fiat currency legacy system. And I want to speak to this today. I want to share a couple of visuals with you of just how damning the problem is when it comes to storing your economic value, your superannuation, your savings, your retirement accounts, all of this in Australian dollars. This is a big problem, and you're going to see why in a moment and where this is going and the opportunity cost associated with you continuing to do that. Now, every single week I talk to people one-on-one on Zoom. I have coaching calls. People book sessions with me, and they're wanting to transition a meaningful part of their financial life into Bitcoin. A lot of people are rotating their underperforming industry super funds into an SMSF, specifically to acquire Bitcoin, the world's best performing asset. And if you've got 10 to 15 years until retirement, I don't know why you wouldn't do that when you consider Bitcoin's performance versus traditional industry superannuation funds. The other reason people have sessions with me is because they want confidence and clarity on the simple next best steps for them to get on their Bitcoin journey, learn about wallets, self-custody, different strategies for dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin, where to buy it in the most frictionless way here in Australia and even in the US as well, how to optimize self-custody for privacy, succession planning. All of these kinds of things are conversations I have with people every single week. So if any of this resonates with you and you'd like clarity on the simple next best steps for you based on where you're at on your journey, please book a call with me. You'll see a link in the show notes below. So let's get into this. Why should you save in Bitcoin, and why will your life dramatically improve when you start allocating to Bitcoin and having a long-term view on this? And there's a couple of reasons for that. In fact, I've written down 3 key reasons today for you. But before I get into that, what I want to do is just share with you a couple of visuals which really paint the picture, the bleak picture, very, very well for the Australian dollar. The first thing to understand is that we know that there are currencies in this world that have failed dramatically. Venezuela, Turkey, we know Argentina is a big one, and in fact I've printed a visual here of the Argentine Peso versus the US dollar, and this is what the chart looks like over the last 10 years. The Argentine Peso over 10 years has lost 99% of its value. 99% of its value. And I'm going to relate this to the Australian dollar in a moment, and you're going to see exactly why we're on the same path here. So the US dollar is the world reserve currency. It's considered the most stable currency on earth. So over the past 10 years, if you've been living in Argentina and saving in Argentine pesos, guess what? You have essentially been selling out your entire financial future by trying to protect and preserve your energy in a currency that is being absolutely decimated due to inflation. And so what have people in Argentina done? They've tried to save in US dollars as quickly as they can. If they've got any spare savings, most people have realized that they need to spend their currency as quickly as they possibly can, because a loaf of bread, carton of milk, anything that they want to buy, the price of it is just getting more and more expensive day after day, week after week. And so their mission is always to just get what they need as quickly as they possibly can, because they know that next week everything is going to be more expensive. And this is what happens when you have currency that is being inflated. And this is happening to all of the currencies of the world right now. It's just that Argentina is a great example of one that, of what happens when you have hyperinflation. Now, again, I'm going to relate this back to the Australian dollar in a moment, but the thing to realise is that in 2003, it only took three Argentine pesos to buy $1. 3. Guess how many Argentine pesos you need to buy a US dollar today? 1,300. So it's gone, in 22 years, it's gone from 3 Argentine pesos to buy $1, remembering that the US dollar is the world reserve currency, so it's a yardstick for preserving value historically. It now takes 1,300 of those pesos to buy that same US dollar. Absolutely crushing stuff. And this is why people have fled Argentina, because they can't function, they can't survive, putting out their labor and their economic energy for a currency that is being inflated to that degree. In Australia, guess what? This chart here shows you the exact same thing. The Australian dollar to Bitcoin over the past 10 years has lost 99% of its value. That means that the Australian dollar is to Bitcoin what the Argentine peso is to the US dollar. To put a cap on this, what this means is that anybody who's not saving in Bitcoin essentially is living in Argentina. Now, Australia is considered one of the more stable currencies of the world. Now, this is what's happening to a relatively stable currency. A relatively stable currency such as the Australian dollar has lost 99% of its value when priced in hard money. Bitcoin is hard money. Bitcoin is money that you can't inflate. And so the implications for this over time to you, your savings, your retirement, your superannuation, your financial legacy that you leave for your family, your kids, the implications of this cannot be underestimated. And so there are very few people that are aware of this right now, because what they're seeing is that their house price is going up. And they think that because their house price is going up in Australian dollars or in US dollars, that they're doing okay. Even though in their gut, intuitively, they know things aren't quite right. They know that the house they live in, the price of it, is not a reflection of its true utility value. And to feel that way is actually truth. It's correct to feel that way. But we put it to the side, we move on with our life, this is the way things are, and we just get on with our day and keep moving forward. Everybody knows things aren't right. Everybody can see the marches in the streets. Everybody can see that house prices are out of control. Everybody can see that superannuation is a problem. Everybody can see that the next generation has no chance of living the great Australian dream or the great American dream. Everybody can feel it. Everybody knows it. But guess what? People aren't doing anything about it for the most part. And so we are on a one-way road to nowhere when it comes to the Australian dollar. And this is why people are waking up and they're realizing, hold on, I need to start protecting and preserving what I have in something, in a system of money that cannot be corrupted, that cannot be inflated, that cannot be debased. And this is what Bitcoin is. There is no politician, no central banker, no CEO. It is a completely decentralized monetary protocol that is designed to reprice the inflationary, corrupt fiat system that is backed by absolutely nothing. The word fiat means by decree. It comes of a Latin term which essentially translates as because I said so. The Australian dollar is based on dictatorship. A small handful of unelected officials dictate the monetary policy that is thrust out into the economy. They decide how much is being printed. They decide how much currency is in circulation. They decide interest rates up and down. They cause the debt bubbles. They cause the growing wealth gap. They sell out the next generation. And so because of this, we come to the realization that we've never truly lived in a global free market. And when you listen to people like Jeff Booth, the light bulb really starts to turn on and you start to realize, holy shit, for the last 50 odd years, our entire lifetime, we've been sold a complete lie. We do not live in a free market. If we lived in a free market, then prices would reflect that. Because guess what happens in a true free market? We have competition. We have economies of scale. We have efficiencies, technology. We get better at producing things. More efficient, more productive. And all of this, when you bring it all together, what it means is that more value is created in society. That's what all of those things do. They create more value in society. And so the question is, why is it that if we're getting better at producing and more competitive and more technologically advanced, etc., why is it that life's getting harder? Shouldn't life be getting easier? Shouldn't prices be falling? Shouldn't life be getting cheaper? The answer to the question is yes. The problem is that we're denominating our life in a corrupt currency, in an inflationary currency, in a currency where there is no transparency. You and I have no idea how many Australian dollars are in circulation, and we have no idea how many will be in circulation in the future, which basically means that we are entrusting this system to preserve our financial energy, knowing intuitively that we are basically having our financial future stolen, and so all that we're trying to do is keep up. We're just trying to keep up because there's no transparency in the system, and there's no way of us knowing exactly what we're saving in. Because if you go and save in Australian dollars today, and they double the money supply tomorrow, essentially the value of those savings have been cut in half through no fault of your own. Have your wages doubled to compensate for that? Absolutely not. And so this is where we are now. And so you have to look at charts like this to get the light bulb moment to realize, hold on a minute, we're on the same trajectory in Australia as Argentina. Now, the measuring stick, instead of us measuring against the US dollar, which is also an inflationary currency that ultimately is also going to zero, what we're doing is we're measuring it in a stronger currency, and this is where we see the absolute truth. The strongest, most absolutely scarce, finite, decentralized currency, which is what Bitcoin is, price the Australian dollar in it, and the Australian dollar is going to zero. So all of this means you need to be saving in Bitcoin. This is why people now realizing that the biggest accessible pool of capital that they have for long-term savings is, of course, their superannuation account, because it's not going to impact their day-to-day life right now. They don't necessarily have to go and sell their house or borrow against their house to go and buy Bitcoin. What they're doing is they're saying, well, hold on, I've got 10, 12, 15 years until retirement, and I've got this pool of savings sitting over here that I've never really paid that much attention to, and it's called superannuation, and I can see that it's performing at 7, 8, 9% a year, right? And that is nowhere near enough to keep up with the rate of currency debasement, which is what true inflation is, which is more like 13, 14, 15%. And so for everybody who's sitting there paying no attention to this and allowing their superannuation fund to perform at 8% a year, They're selling out their financial future, which is absolutely insane in my opinion, because the opportunity cost of sitting there and doing nothing is basically the difference between living a really subsistence style of life in retirement, where you're constantly worried about money because superannuation is simply not going to be enough for most people, or being completely comfortable in retirement and being able to leave a financial legacy for your kids. And so this is why people are saying, hold on, let's rotate this underperforming industry super fund that's doing just 8%, let's rotate it into a self-managed superannuation fund, and let's acquire the best performing asset of all time, an asset where there is complete transparency, where you know exactly how much is in circulation, where you know exactly how much is coming down the pike, where you know exactly what the hard cap is, and you've got all of this past performance to rationalize and try to predict where all of this is going over the next 10, 12, 15 years. And when you start to play with tools like a reverse CAGR calculator and you put in $100,000 as an example, for every $100,000 that you got in superannuation at 8%, guess what's going to happen in 10 years' time? Best case scenario, probably $200,000, $220,000. So let's say you're going to double the value of what's in your superannuation if you leave it in an industry super fund at 8%. You put that $100,000 into Bitcoin at its historical compound growth rate over the past, let's call it 7 years, has been around 59%, 10 years been around 80%, so let's just work with 50%. Just say you put $100,000 into Bitcoin over the next 10 years, you've got 10 years till retirement. Guess what? It's going to be worth about $5.7 million. And so people who are awake to this are realizing that in terms of long-term savings, this is the place to be. So, Bitcoin rewards low time preference. You've got to play the long game. This is why people are choosing superannuation, because they've got a long time until retirement. They're not able to touch it now anyway, and they want to know when they get to retirement age they're going to have enough. Other people are choosing to dollar cost average into Bitcoin, put in a certain amount every single fortnight, every single month, every single quarter, whenever they get a commission check or some excess savings that they know they don't need for the next 4 or 5 years, they're deploying it into Bitcoin, and they're just getting on with their life. Every time they have spare capital, spare savings, deploying it into Bitcoin. Some people are selling down their real estate right now, rental properties. They can see all of the problems associated with that. What are they doing? They're rolling it into Bitcoin. And again, these are the conversations I have with people every single week. People from all walks of life. I've got several property developers now, people in real estate, people from the financial industry who are now waking up and they're saying, this is the place to be. They can't talk about it in their own profession, right? There's all sorts of reasons why they can't. So they're quietly coming over here and they're deploying into Bitcoin in their personal lives. And, you know, this is the way things are now. So the Australian dollar is to Bitcoin what the Argentine Peso, one of the worst, most inflated, destructive currencies on earth, is to the US dollar. So I want you to let that sink in terms of the trajectory that we're on, and start paying attention to Bitcoin if you're not already. If you already have an allocation to Bitcoin, my thought and probably my guarantee to you is that you don't have enough. You know, you need to really assess what you're doing on your Bitcoin journey. You need to learn about self-custody. You need to be as detached as you can from the system where there's so much counterparty risk now. And so it's really important to be leveling up your level of knowledge with this and starting to have a decentralized mindset when it comes to your financial future. And I really believe that Bitcoin is the place to be, because it enables us to be in complete control of our own financial life when we do it right. And everything suggests that we're in an environment now where that's absolutely crucial. I'm going to leave it there today. I want you to save in Bitcoin. If you're not ready to do that, read a couple of books, listen to some long-form podcasts. I'd highly recommend that you listen to Jeff Booth. He wrote a book called The Price of Tomorrow about 5 or 6 years ago. It explains all of this in terms of deflation, the reason why Bitcoin exists, the fact that it's repricing everything. You can hear him talk about that on his long-form podcasts. People like Tony Yazbeck from the Bitcoin Way, his story is a damning reflection as to why we need to be decentralized in our financial lives, because nobody can trust the system and the banks, because they can steal all of your life savings at the flick of a button. And this is the reality of where we are now. So I'm going to leave it there today. Let's say a quick hello to Chili before we go. He's not being very social today. But I want to thank you for tuning in. Hope you got some value today. If you need to book a call with me, please see a link in the show notes. And I'd love to meet you on Zoom. You'll see the booking page, all the reviews there from people who I help and the feedback they get from having calls with me. See a link in the show notes. Other than that, please like, share and subscribe. Leave your comments, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. This is Zane signing out. Bye for now.